All right, I call this meeting to order October 5th at 7 o'clock. Ashley,
Yes, I'm here.
you're all set?
Yep.
And Troy Guerin is here also. Gordon, do you want to officially recuse yourself?
Are we starting off right away with that, or are we gonna, is there a time set
We can do,
for the live entertainment?
well, if you want to all do that first, we can do that first and get it out of the way.
Is the person that proposed that on right now?
I don't think so. I didn't invite them on. I just simply said that I was bringing this to the board. So it's the South Shore Children's Museum. They want to run a not so scary walk over at Walmart. I believe it's a couple weekends from now. They need a live entertainment permit because they are going to have, I think, some music. I think maybe it's just recorded or whatever. I had sent a note out to Bob Valeri, to Police Chief Chavs and Fire Chief Averos. As far as I know, the chiefs are fine with this. Bob had no qualms, as long, obviously, as they do, the necessary precautions, but he's happy to have them there.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the board or a motion?
Unmove it. I don't see it unless the police department, the fire department has been notified, right?
Yes,
Okay.
his chief's on the phone, I know that. Or not on, he's at the meeting here. So I
Okay.
don't know if he has any comments.
Chief?
Unmove it.
Okay. Ashley, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, Troy,
Aye.
Ashley,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, and I will recuse myself from the hearing as my father owns a property within 300 feet of the proposed location.
Back to you, Troy.
Charlie, are you ready? Who's speaking for the company?
Well, I think John has the presentation available, or I can do it. John, who's going to be leading for your team?
Toby Dilworth.
Okay. So are you going to be ready to run the presentation? Do you want me to?
I mean, if it's easier for you to run it, plus I assume if people try to come in, you'll be able to let them in a lot easier than me trying to figure it out.
Well, yeah, I would still have that, but I'm sharing the screen now. I believe if everybody sees it.
Yes,
thank you.
Okay. So go, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Toby Dilworth. I represent Green Earth Cannabis. I want to thank you, Mr. Guerin and Mr. Sessa, for making yourselves available. I know we had some false starts, but we're finally here together. And I also want to thank Mr. Seelig for his help in organizing this. We can go to the next slide. There are a number of issues we want to talk tonight about the host community agreement. You have my letter of June 28th, and I'm not going to repeat what I wrote in that letter. We can go back to the, yeah, right there. That's great. What I'd like to do tonight is to introduce the principles of Green Earth, talk a little bit about the site, but most important to talk about what is in the agreement, what is entailed in that, and what it means for the town of Halifax. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So John Kudrick, who you just met, is the president and CEO. He's the co-founder of Digit Communications in Lakeville, and he lives in Bridgewater. Matt Collins is also on this call. He's the CFO. He bought a failing pool and spa business and turned it around. He lives in North Dayton. We can go to slide 4. Bob Maker is the Director of Operations. He's lived in Halifax for over 25 years, and he's had positions of responsibility as at Shaw's for over 25 years. Jay Skowronek is the Director of Security. He's a veteran of the Air Force. He's worked for 50 years in the electronic protection industry. Worked in security systems for large, sophisticated companies, and perhaps most relevantly, He has already designed a security system for a medical marijuana grow facility in Connecticut. I also want to mention Lawrence Gogarty is a member of the team. He's not a principal, he's not an owner.
I could get a phone, but
Folks, if you're not on the
everybody I know
recording
calls me
presentation,
this.
please turn your mic
They
off.
track it. I love using somebody's phone so they
Excuse me.
look at it if they want or. Not that I'm doing anything wrong.
Okay. So Lawrence Gogarty is an arts consultant.
Sorry, Toby.
Okay, how's that?
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It seemed that the sound was coming from your screen that we were getting interruption, so my apologies.
It wasn't
Keep
my,
going.
yeah, my kids tell me to mute all the time, so I'm used to it. Lawrence Gogarty is a consultant. He's at Arts Consulting. He is is going to be helping with the site plan review and the build out and improvement on the site. So let's go to the next slide, the location information. One back. So Green Earth is seeking to open an adult use marijuana retail establishment at 657 Monpont. We signed a lease in November of 2020. It's situated in the business zone. And in September 2020, the residents of Halifax voted to allow marijuana establishments to in the business zone to exist. This site meets all the local and state requirements, including the proximity to schools, childcare facilities, and facilities licensed to pour alcohol. We have the setbacks. We're quite confident in that. Can we see the next slide? So this is the site. The left side of the building, which is the one that we have the lease on, is about 1,930 square feet. The total site's about 4 acres, 3 acres of parking. The project will require extensive renovations and improvements. We think that the project will look better after we're in there and operating than it does now. The right side of the store is of the building rather, is a liquor store, 2,700 square feet, the Twins Lake Liquor Store. Now, the next slide is a very preliminary store layout design, and it's subject to review by the planning board and the police department. It's particular with regard to security, and it also needs the Cannabis Control Commission approval before it's finally ready to go. You'll see, to get your bearings, Montponce Street is on the left there, so that's the front of the building. The plan is that the entry would be in the front corner, and there would be a check-in area. So everybody would have to be checked in, and their IDs would be checked before they can come in. They have to be eligible to purchase marijuana to come in. The upside down T is in the middle of that page is the display area where the customers would see what's available. And then if they decided to buy something, they would go to the pickup area, which is in the middle of that diagram. That's secured so that for safety reasons. And then once the person is purchased, they would exit. Everything to the right side, the back of the building, is secure and protected from intrusion by somebody out in the front. Again, that's very preliminary. It may very well change based on what the police department suggests, the CCC and planning board require. So let's go to the next slide. So the Board of Selectmen is not providing final approval for this facility. In other words, Green Earth cannot open tomorrow, even if you approve the HCA tonight. We have to go through 4 steps, one of which is the host community agreement That's the only issue before the Board of Selectmen tonight. And in a nutshell, that's a contract between the town of Halifax and Green Earth. We have to undertake a community outreach session, which we expect to do this fall. The CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, has strict rules about what is involved in that. We have to give notice to all of the abutters. It will be conducted in the evening so that people can come after work. The principals would describe the business, the operation, to all the neighbors and anybody else in town who's interested. They'll talk about the location. They'll answer any questions that residents have. That's not what this is tonight, but it's mandated by the Commonwealth statutes. The third thing we have to get is a license, a provisional license from the Commonwealth's Cannabis Control Commission. That's the state license we need to get. We have to prove that Green Earth complies with the state regulations. The one thing we need to do before we undertake that process is to get the HCA from the town. That's an element of the application to the Cannabis Control Commission. The fourth thing, and perhaps most important, is the Halifax Planning Board. We have to get approval there after full site plan review. We'll have to present more complete diagrams and drawings and discuss the traffic, the lighting, the fencing, the litter issues that neighbors and abutters may have. Again, that's where Lawrence Gogarty will be a key participant in this as an expert in the area. And the planning board will give a special permit, we hope. So this is a heightened standard for review. Each one of these parts is distinct. There's no set rule about the order. In other words, we could go and get the planning board review first before we go to the ask for an HCA, but we've done it in this order. We started with the HCA. We'll do the community outreach session. We'll get the license from the Cannabis Control Commission, but nothing opens until we get full approval from the Halifax Planning Board. I think Mr. Seelig referred to this as a three-legged stool, and he's right. You can't open unless you get approvals from the town Board of Selectmen in this instance for the HCA, the state for the license from the Cannabis Control Commission, and the license from the Halifax Planning Board. Okay, how about the next slide? So as I mentioned, the HCA is a contract between the board and excuse me, the town of Halifax and the Green Earth company. The CCC sets out certain elements of the HCA, such as the length of the agreement, whether or not the company will agree to give preferences for hiring to local residents, the type of security system, and the community impact fee. It can be under the statute up to 3%. And it's called the community impact fee, but the town can actually use that money for any purpose. Doesn't have to be related to the marijuana establishment. So let's go to the next slide and talk about Green Earth's HCA. What are the principal elements? First of all, it's a 5-year term, and so it's not indefinite. And more importantly, perhaps, is that it can't be transferred without the town's approval. In other words, if Green Earth sells its business or wants to sell its business and somebody else comes in and you don't want to do business with them, you don't have to. This is not transferable. And you can renegotiate it after 5 years. Green Earth, as the CCC has suggested, has agreed to give a hiring preference to local residents as part of this HCA. We anticipate that as many as 12 full-time and 4 part-time employees will be required at that facility. And we hope to hire as many residents of Halifax as we can. It acknowledges the 3% local excise tax on each retail sale. That's a state tax that's, well, it's collected by the state, but it's returned to the town. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. We agreed under this HCA to give the town another 3% in the community impact fee. That's again separate from the excise tax. It's in addition to the excise tax. That's the maximum that the state statutes allow the town to get. So we've given as much as we can that the statute provides for. Again, the payments go directly to the town, and there's no limitation on the use of that fund, of those funds. The HCA also provides for the provision of a adequate security system. It requires us to work with the police department and to comply with the CCC, the Cannabis Commission, and I'll discuss that more in just a minute. It also provides for a community dispute resolution process. So if you give us this HCA, we get approval from the CCC, and we get approval from the planning board, and there's still a problem. You know, in 2 years or 3 years, there's a litter problem or an odor problem. There's a provision where the town can step in under this community dispute resolution process. And it can address traffic pattern problems or odor problems or noise or lighting problems. The town can propose remediation, whether it's an additional police detail during certain hours or times, or a traffic pattern, traffic plan. And it also provides for third, right there, yeah, no. Green Earth HCA, yeah. So there's also a third-party mediation process. So this is in addition to the normal provisions of a company moving in. Now, importantly, these are the same exact terms as Halifax's HCA with Flower and Soul. In fact, the two HCAs are so identical, they even have the same typos with regard to the paragraph numbering. They're cut and pasted from each other. The terms are identical, and we say, well, it's reasonable for and fair for Flower and Soul is reasonable and fair for us. That's all we're asking. The same deal that Halifax gave to Flower and Soul, we're asking for us. The differences regarding location are reasonably addressed with the police department and the planning board. That's the forum to decide about traffic and litter and fencing and lighting. All those issues are important. They will be addressed, but comparing apples to apples, HCA to HCA, this is exactly the same, except for the names, as the HCA that you gave to Flower and Soul. Now let's look at the next slide. I mentioned I wanted to talk about the revenues. These are projections. We think they're conservative. On the left-hand side, you'll see the total sales each year, and we have projected out the first 5 years. And so in year one, we expect the total sales to be about $4.9 million. The town will get the local sales tax, and 3% of that is $147,000. Under this agreement, the town will also get the community impact fee, which again is $147,000. So we expect in the first year, the town will get about $290,000 that it can use at its discretion. And when you project out to year 5, where the sales we hope are $7.8 million, 3% sales tax is $235,000, and the 3% community impact fee is $235,000. So it's $470,000 to the town of Halifax. Now, if Green Earth doesn't move into that site, there could be a bar at that site. It would be appropriately zoned there. And if it got approval, it would generate as much noise or loitering or litter, and probably, I submit, more than what Green Earth would. And it would stay open later. Green Earth closes under the ordinance. It has to close at 8 p.m. every night. Bars don't close at 8 p.m. And people go out and smoke and loiter and drop their cigarette butts and dance and sing. I submit that there's no other business that could generate as much revenue for the town in that location as Green Earth could. And I think it would be a lot better neighbor than other options. Let's go to the next one. The security system is, again, the same as Flower and Soul. The security system will be properly designed and professionally installed and monitored. The controls are focused on preventing diversion, whether by employees or to people who aren't entitled to purchase marijuana, to, people who are too young, as well as burglaries and robberies. The security section is on page 5 of the HCA. It's marked paragraph 8 on page 5. And it requires Green Earth to establish a camera system that provides unobstructed surveillance of the entire exterior of the premises. And then it also requires Green Earth to work with the Halifax PD to establish a traffic management plan, a parking plan, fencing, and after hours contact information. If there is a problem after 8 p.m. and they don't know who to get in touch with, they will have that information at the police department. And they also agree to have periodic meetings with the police department. Let's turn to the next page. At the last meeting, there were a lot of issues about parking and traffic and lighting and fencing and litter and loitering. Those are all critical, important issues. We don't discount them at all. They have to be addressed before Green Earth opens. And they will be with the police department, the whole issue of traffic and security and loitering and noise, and in the planning board site review process. Green Earth will work with its neighbors. They want to be good neighbors, and we're here for the long haul. Some of the principals have lived in this town for a long, long time. They're not fly-by-nighters. And they're going to be around, hopefully, for a lot longer than 5 years. So this will be addressed with the police department and then with the planning board, all of these issues. And we expect the planning board to impose stringent standards, and we're going to meet those standards. So let's go to the next one. When this ACA was first presented to you, I don't think that we gave you enough information, and we apologize for that. We just assumed that it was, the HCA was going to explain itself, and it clearly, we were wrong in that, and we should have given you more information about it. And I think Flower and Soul did give you more information, and we want to do the same now. So we wanted to give you a fuller picture of the HCA. We've put in a lot of effort, devoted a lot of resources and time in negotiating this. And we're committed to be a good neighbor and a partner with the town. You've already approved an identical HCA for Flower and Soul, and we ask for the same because we think it's only fair. Thank you very much.
So Troy, we've got 27 people, but I think questions could come from you and Ashley first, and then depending on how you want me to operate, we'll work down the attendees for the meeting. But I think you and Ashley would have the right to be able to ask the questions first that you have.
Ashley, you have any questions?
I had a few questions. Charlie, will you pull the slide up about what the inside's gonna look like?
Let's get back to that. Sure.
Sorry, thank you.
Everybody see that?
So we explained what the T was, everything else. All those things numbered 1 through 8, are those registers?
Those are stations. John, why don't I defer to you?
No. No. No sauce.
John, you're on mute.
Sorry. No sauce. No.
If anybody isn't talking, please mute your microphone so everybody can hear what's going on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so those numbers 1 through 8 are registers. So after someone gets checked in, they'll head over to one of the registers and a bud tender will be able to assist them going through the products, and so they understand what they're purchasing. After the sale's complete, then they'll walk over to the pickup window, pick up their order, and then head on out afterward.
So how many people do you intend to have in the store at one time?
How many like customers?
Customers, yes.
I mean, I don't know if we're necessarily going to use all 8 registers, but I mean, once we get a layout and we can see how many people are actually can fit comfortably without an issue, then we'll know. I mean, because this layout is like Toby said, subject to change.
Do you have like a capacity limit? How many people you're allowed to have in there total with your staff?
Well, I think that would be up to the planning board.
Well, that actually, if I may, John,
Yes.
there wouldn't be a capacity
Larry,
limit in a
you need to
retail store
identify
like that.
yourself, Larry. You need to identify yourself just
I'm
because.
sorry,
Thanks.
sorry, Charlie. Lawrence Gogarty here. I did the layout. There would not necessarily be a capacity limit for a retail store like this.
I have it. Give it to me. Give me the ball. I'll throw it.
But can I also interject that this is subject to review by the CCC. They're going to be imposing state standards and on the layout and design.
Ouch.
The police will also have a say in it in the design.
So as far as security goes, a lot of what we heard from the community was that they were concerned about being so close to proximity to a lot of people's yards and houses. I know you keep saying this is the same exact HCA, which I hear, but it's not the same exact location. It's a very different type of location. There's a lot of residents very close by with children, with fenced in yards. What is your plan security wise, or your thought? How far are you willing to go to make those residents feel comfortable with a facility like this being here?
Well, obviously, there's going to have to be fencing and buffering from neighbors. There's no question about that. And that's what the planning board process is designed for, to look at precisely at what the lighting is going to be. How tall is the fencing? What kind of fencing? All those issues have to be resolved by the planning board. And I submit that that's something that the town ordinance leaves to the planning board, not to the Board of Selectmen. They don't ask you to do that. We didn't set up the system. They told us that we have to go get that approval from the planning board, and we will do so. And if we can't satisfy the planning board, we don't get our license. We don't get to open.
Troy, do you have a question?
No, just a statement. If what you're implying as far as security is concerned, and I echo the same thing as the neighbors. You've pointed out that you can deal with the traffic, parking, and after hours.
Well, let me just say a couple things. First, in terms of security, that paragraph on page 5 requires us to get to consult with the police department about security. Okay, so I don't know who's going to be more expert than the town's police chief and the police department about what the security requirements are. But obviously we have to work with them to come up with a plan. That's first. Second, we have to comply with the CCC, which has security regulations and requirements. And third of all, in terms of fencing and buffering and all those sorts of things, you know, the town has set up the planning board to decide those issues. And that's who'll decide them, just as they will with Flower and Soul. Yeah.
And you said earlier on that slide of the things that you had to go through in order to do all those things, that they don't have to be done in any particular order, correct?
Yeah, the one thing we have to do is we have to have an HCA. We have to get your approval before we go to the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission. We have to do that.
you
And we also
need-
have to get the community outreach session before we go to the CCC. So
And
the
what about
first
the planning board?
That's in any order. So we can do that first. That's an expensive, drawn-out process. We decided to get the HCA, do the community outreach session, and then we'll do the planning board and get the CCC approval. But let me go back to the security. You know, each site is unique. We concede that. And the location of Flower and Soul is different from our location. But the ordinance, we didn't, you know, these aren't our rules. These are the town's rules. Say that those decisions are for the planning board. They don't lay those decisions on your feet. They lay them at the feet of the planning board. And that's where we just ask to be given a chance to persuade them and explain to them how we will meet their standards.
But you can go to them without us giving you the HCA first, correct?
We could, but that's not what
And you can do the
require at
community
Flower and Soul.
outreach.
Yeah,
You can
but
do the community outreach and talk to everybody in the community before we agree on a HCA.
We could. Oh, well, we have to. We can't go to the CCC before you give us the HCA. But you didn't ask Flower and Soul to do that.
We've gotten a lot of feedback on this particular property from the residents in this town.
Well, I know, and I have a feeling that most of those are issues that having to do with the issues uniquely set for the planning board. The town's own ordinance says the planning board is the decider of those issues.
And that's why I'm not sure how I feel about giving an HCA on something without the decider being the planning board not getting their recommendation. But
Well,
that being said, Troy, if you don't have any more questions, maybe we should open it up to some of these 27 people that might have something that they want to say.
Go right ahead.
I think the best way to do this, Charlie, is to have people use the raise the hand option. And I just want to remind everybody that before you speak, you have to give your name and where you live, your address. And please just stay muted and let each other talk and be respectful. Kristen Mearls, I saw your hand go up first. If you'd like to speak, you can unmute.
Hi, Kristen Merles, 26 Bow Street in Halifax, right behind the liquor store. I just want clarification. Did you say there was 3 acres of parking? Because I'm looking at a plot plan for 657 to 659. It says it's 1.2 acres. And I'm pretty sure you stated there was going to be 3 acres of parking there.
I'm going to defer to Lawrence. He knows more precisely than I do.
On that question, the area of the site is only 1.49. So I'm not sure where anybody would have come up with 3 acres of parking.
He said it in his, when he was making his presentation, Toby, he said there was 3 acres of parking. I don't know if he wants to go back in his notes, but he said that it was a 4-acre lot and that there was going to be 3 acres of parking. So that was said a few slides back.
If I misspoke, I apologize. And Mr. Gogarty knows a lot more about the actual site than I do.
So so that was an incorrect statement. I think you should provide some clarity to that, not just say defer to someone else.
I defer to Mr. Gogarty. He knows the site better than I do. If I misspoke, I apologize.
Okay, and
But I,
let me,
you know,
let me- let
I
me
don't think this,
clarify. Again, the area of the site is 1.24 acres. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you what the building footprint is, but we have in excess of 98 parking spaces available on that site.
98 parking spaces.
More than that. If
Can
we-
you go to the site? Can you show me on the site plan where there's 98, where you're gonna fit 98 cars? I'd like to see that.
Let's see.
it's not gonna be on this site plan.
We do not have the site plan. We only have this diagram.
So you expect to fit 98 cars in that lot back there? Is that correct?
Again, I don't, sorry, anyway, no, I don't have the site plan in front of me, but I know that between the left side and the right side, if we paved the entire area, we would have in excess of that for parking spaces. That's not our intention, by the way, because we don't need that many spaces.
And is your intent to take down that house? So what happens with that house that's there?
There is, at this point, there's no intention to do anything with that house.
So potentially someone could be living in the parking lot of a shop like this.
I mean, potentially, there's a possibility of anything, but I don't know what the landlord has in this point in mind for that house.
And let me reemphasize that we're not the landlord. We're a tenant. We don't decide what happens to that house.
Understood. I'm just asking questions as a concerned citizen, saying that you can put 98 cars back there, and when you spoke, there was 3 acres there, and there's not. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Can you clarify too that, so the parking, the 98 spots or however many spots, this is the estimate before you put up fencing, and that's for both properties, correct? So those spots would be for the liquor store and the marijuana facility? You would have a shared parking lot.
All I can really say at this point is that if we were to maximize the paved area, we could get that many spaces. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we will do, because we don't need that many spaces.
Do you have any other facilities that you guys currently operate?
No, we don't have any other facilities in operation at this time.
I was just going to ask if your like how many people per day your other facilities were, but I figured I would ask that question first before I start asking. Brian, your hand is raised. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, Brian Newmeyer, 244 Home Street. I don't really have a question. I just want to, point out the obvious here. There's a lot of tax revenue for the town. It's in a good location. It's going to bring jobs to the town. I really don't see why we'd object to this. I don't have the numbers written down, but in the hundreds of thousands of tax dollars to go towards the town, I think we could take some away from that. We need roads and sidewalks and signs, and every other town meeting I've been to, that seems to be an issue. Well, in front of us, here's the answer. And if, they Green Earth Cannabis follows the rules and follows everything, the procedures, I really don't see anything wrong with this. And why wouldn't we is the question, when every other town seems to be doing this. And instead of bringing our money to other towns, why wouldn't we want to bring it to our town and grow along with everybody else? Thank you.
Okay, Brian. Mama
Mama
Dukes,
Duke.
you want?
Hi, this is Jamie DeGusto, 10 Bow Street. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. So my property abuts the back of both the commercial and residential property. And my concern was the 4-acre lot that was misrepresented in the presentation because it is just an acre and a half at best with both the commercial and residential property standing. And to crunch numbers to reach that, I'm going to round up, guys, to that 5 million bottom line profit margin. Just with the average ticket sales with current existing marijuana dispensaries in our local towns, average ticket wise, to reach that bottom line margin, you're looking at 18 to 20 cars an hour, 7 days a week to reach that bottom line margin. So traffic is an issue. That turn already has fatalities. And not having 4 acres as presented, and you're cutting that down more than 50% on the lot, I'm a little passionate about this because I'm not against new business in Halifax. I think it's great. I just think that in a residential neighborhood, I understand it's commercially zoned, but you got to look at the people around you. We are good neighbors. You know what I'm saying? And just for that amount of traffic in somebody's backyard, my kitchen door is not even 250 feet from the back door of the existing liquor store. So, talk about a buffer. Are we putting up steel walls? You know what I'm saying? So I'm against the HCA, just not in Halifax, just at this particular location. That's all I think I have to say.
Adam Anderson, do you want to speak?
Yeah, Adam Anderson, 649 on Ponset, directly next door to the liquor store. So, a couple questions. First, it was, so how did they have the lease signed in November of 2020 when Mr. Gilgarity said that side of the liquor store was just gonna be for storage use only, not stating anything about a pot shop? And second, how do you plan on having people lined up at the front door of a pot shop when you only have roughly 20 feet of frontage from a main road, Route 58, when cars speed up and down Route 58 around a blind corner where a house was already hit about 2 weeks ago, and now it's going to be 2 high traffic businesses between the liquor store and the pot shop. And also that liquor store was supposed to be, that side of the parking lot was supposed to be for liquor store parking only, and the other side was going to be for the pot shop parking only. But now they're saying that they're going to use the whole parking lot for pot and liquor, so you're going to have people drinking and smoking weed outside the establishment, because it does and will happen. So, can I get some answers on that, some more clarification? I'd appreciate that.
Lawrence, you want to answer that?
I will. The plan is for the right side of the store to have 25 spaces for the liquor store, which is more than the zoning regulations call for. And as I said earlier, if we were to maximize the impervious area on the right side of the left side of the building, we might get, I'm looking at a schematic site plan I did right now that you don't have the benefit of seeing, but we can get about maybe 45 to 50 spaces. So let me, by the way, correct myself, what I said earlier. If we maximize the impervious area of the site, which is not really what we would want to do from an aesthetic standpoint, we can get probably double the amount of spaces that are required by the Halifax zoning.
So then what are you guys gonna do about all the bus stops for the kids that stand right next door to the liquor store? I mean, where the pot shop parking would be on Bow Street. You have cars going in and out of that parking lot when there's a bus stop right there where children get off the bus to walk to their houses. And there's 2 bus stops within 100 feet of that parking lot. I mean, there's-
Adam,
no. I'm talking. Don't talk over me. I'm talking right now.
I'm sorry.
There's children that live in this neighborhood, in this commercial, really residential area, and no one's talked about the kids or the bus stops or any protection for them. That's where children congregate to go to and from school every single day, Monday through Friday. You can speak now there, Mr. Gogarity.
Well, I mean, as you know, as Toby said earlier, when we get to the point of a site plan special permit review by the planning board, they will impose stringent standards for what we have to do with respect to the traffic flow, the parking, the site lighting, security, et cetera, and it would be our intention to meet or exceed all of those requirements. So I understand your concerns, Adam. And you and I, we've talked about this before. Our objective would be to meet those requirements and exceed those requirements, which is what we are required to do per the planning board regulations and what they stipulated for the Flower and Soul project.
And I also add that the reason why the ordinance leaves this to the planning board is because they have the time and the expertise to do this, to get the traffic plan, to see exactly how many cars are going by there, what time of day. You know, you mentioned the school bus stops. All of us who are parents have concerns about where the school bus stops are. Those school bus stops are there whether or not Green Earth is in that facility or not. To the extent that Green Earth affects the traffic pattern, that should be examined by experts in traffic. There are traffic studies experts, and they do that. And then we will, as we were obligated to do, talk to the police department. The police department can require other traffic studies, and the planning board. Again, we didn't set up these rules or this protocol. The town did, and the state did. We're following it, and we're just asking that we go in our own lanes, and that all the issues we've heard today, all of them are important. There's no question about that. All of them are critical. And Mr. Anderson, I'm a neighbor of commercial space too. I know the pressures of that.
Why did we block out?
But that's an issue for the planning board. None of the issues we've heard so far have to do with the HCA.
What is a host community agreement? What is that?
Does anybody have anything else they want to ask or contribute?
What is it?
This is Kristen Marles again. I'm just curious, in your presentation, you said you wanted to be a good neighbor. Don't you think you would have come with some of these answers or been able to give us a better answer than that's someone else's job? I mean, I just don't hear that you guys are trying to be good neighbors, because you are completely dismissing everything that people are saying by someone else's thing. I think the other company that did get the approval in Halifax definitely did stuff to appease the neighbors to really get their stuff approved. They put up a fence, they did what they had to do. I'm just not hearing you guys are doing anything to make the neighbors happy or put our minds at ease, other than saying that's someone else's job. That someone else will do that. Don't you think putting a business in there, you should have those answers?
Nobody's putting in any business until those questions are answered. There's no question about that. And we're just doing it in a different order than Flower and Soul did. But Flower and Soul went to the planning board. Those issues weren't decided by the Board of Selectmen. Those issues were decided by the planning board. And that's exactly what we'll do. And we will follow what the planning board requires us to do in terms of fencing and buffer and making sure that whatever impact there is in that community is as minor as possible. I mean, is there going to be more traffic? We hope so. But we got to, with any business, there's going to be more traffic. With a bar, there's going to be more traffic than there is right now. And there'll be later nights and there'll be more noise. We'll be less than that. And we want to be here for the long term. And so we're not going to just, do the quick and easy thing. We want to do it right. But again, the format for that is the planning board, not tonight based on some, what people think that the traffic might be.
Charlie,
Yes, I
what order did Flower and Soul go in with this whole HCA, planning board, community outreach?
Well, the community there's a question I have about the community outreach, but they did the community outreach first, then got the HCA signed with the Board of Selectmen, then went to the planning board to get the site plan and special permit approved. They have then finished the licensing process, because you can't start the licensing process with the state until you get the HCA. You don't need site plan and special permit to get the provisional license up to the state. You do need the HCA.
Okay. Deborah Bunzel, sorry if I said your name wrong. Do you want to speak?
Hi, Deborah Bunzel, 98 Walnut Street, Halifax. I have a question regarding, or a statement, 300 feet within a residential zoning. How is this meeting that requirement?
Well, I think you're referring, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Are you, the zoning setback, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, the bylaw.
Okay, well, we think we comply with it, and that's exactly what the planning board is going to determine. It's not for the selectmen to go into the meanings of the zoning code. And if we don't satisfy the setbacks or anything else, we don't get approval. It's that simple.
Yes, that's
Mama Dukes, you had
So,
your hand up
A
again.
follow up with that.
Oh, yep.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a follow up to that. It says, as far as I know, it's lot line to lot line.
I don't know which section you're referring to.
Okay, bringing up for discussion then.
Across the street diagonally too. I don't know.
So Mama Dukes, did you have another question, or did your hand just not come down yet?
No, this is Jamie DeGiusto again, 10 Bow Street. In behalf of the HCA itself, because that's what's really on the table here. You're looking at a 3%, right, for your community impact with a 3% local tax, right?
Right.
So with that bottom line at the 5 million, does that mean that this liquor store will be non-existent? Because the amount of space that's in your, if you guys want to pull up your presentation again, the amount of space allotted in that storage unit doesn't seem to match the layout of what you're presenting. So does that mean the liquor store is going to be gone and it's just going to be a full marijuana dispensary?
No.
Because that would explain how you're
The
going to
liquor-
generate that revenue.
No, you
I have a
see,
lot of questions.
I don't know what numbers you're using, and I'm not sure.
They're from your presentation, the
No,
numbers
but
that you gave me to.
I didn't talk about how many, what the ticket price was, the average
What,
ticket
the what?
was. The average ticket was, I think that's what.
Oh,
you were-
that's just basic bottom line Common Core math or Dewey Decimal Math. That was
Okay.
just basic. You know what I
Oh.
mean? I just went with what are, I mean, if you have a pot shop in, I'd say Bridgewater or Brockton or inner city Boston. I just used those numbers. My question is, to reach your revenue of 5 million, the storage unit that's allotted for this marijuana dispensary is not what's presented on your presentation. Is this just going to take over the whole liquor store? That's my question.
Toby,
The answer
Toby,
to,
if I may, let me answer that.
sure.
If you go back to the slide that shows the layout of the liquor store. Sorry, of the retail marijuana store. Marmaduke, to answer your question, the plan you're looking at is for the 1,900 square feet of currently storage area next to the liquor store. The liquor store or the marijuana store is not encroaching on the existing liquor store.
Okay, this is outside of that.
This is the space beside the liquor store.
Okay.
So the liquor store, basically the demising wall, do you see where it says preliminary floor layout plan?
Yeah, so that side of it would be the liquor
That
store.
wall, and it goes up a little and goes across to the bathroom.
Okay, that's just
Everything-
a very small space to generate 5 million in 1 year. But that's, okay. I'm just trying to figure out where the bottom line is and how we're really gonna get to that 3%, because that's the selling point of an HCA. And I'm
I
just
think it was
really curious how we're gonna drive that. Thank you.
Judy Wall.
Hi. I'm Judy Wall from Cherry Street, and I would like to really support this store. I have been a longtime resident of Halifax. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I have worked the town polls in town for 15 plus years. I have also been on certain committees for Halifax and Lights. And I think it has my family been on this. We do a lot of volunteer work in town. And I really think that maybe the town should support us a little bit. And all these issues that are coming up tonight, I understand. And I think they can all be worked out in time. Thank you.
Al Maker.
Hi, my name's Kyle from Cherry Street as well. And I don't know if the neighbors would rather look at something that, you know, has overgrown weeds in the parking lot, in an abandoned building that's just, you know, left there, that's not really doing any good for the town, rather than something that's, you know, revamped and fixed up into something you would actually want to look at, you know, a paved parking lot or something that's benefiting the town rather than just a vacant building standing there. It would benefit the neighbors as well as people who go by it every day to their commute to work in and out of town, or just anyone in general who, you know, makes a commute by the property. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Troy, if I could, I have a couple of questions on the HCA.
Go ahead.
On the 3% community impact fee, given the litigation that's happening up in Haverhill, what are the chances that we're going to be able, in fact, to get the full amount of the 3% and also use it for circumstances that aren't related to the costs incurred by the town for a marijuana facility?
Well, who can predict what the outcome of that litigation is going to be? But we've conceded in the HCA not to challenge it.
I understand that, but the court system and or the legislature may very well decide that despite having signed an HCA, that the terms of the HCA are not binding in those cases. So my concern is whether the town will fully see that 3%. I'm not saying it won't, but this has come up during the last couple of years as slowly the CCC and the legislature seem to be moving in that direction, at the very least, saying that the cost, the 3% or whatever the community impact fee, has to be devoted to costs incurred by the town because of the facility. And very possibly can't be used for other things. I think that was one of the original selling points several years ago when the original legislation was approved by the voters. And the state, modified it as necessary. I mean, that's what we thought here in Halifax. I'm just concerned that, not that you're promising something that you don't think you're going to be able to do, it's more that the laws themselves may change in the future.
Well, that's always the case, but in this HCA, and this was negotiated the same as with Flower and Soul. If we try to get out of that community, if we join in that effort, there are penalties that we suffer. And on page 2 of the HCA, in paragraph 2C, it says, in the event that Green Earth's obligation to provide CIF funding under this HCA is determined to be unenforceable or stricken, either mutually by the parties or by a court of competent jurisdiction, then Green Earth and the town will negotiate in good faith an amendment to the ACA or a new ACA containing provisions, including community funding provisions, that removes any unenforceable or stricken provisions. So I think you've negotiated as much protection as you possibly can. We've given you as much protection as the town can. More protection than other towns are getting, I know. So we expect to be paying that 3% one way or the other, regardless of the litigation. And it's a significant contribution to the town.
Absolutely. Yeah. On the HCA itself, given the case up in Salem, do you think the board has the option, in fact, to reject the HCA, even though it's on the same terms as the one that they signed with Flower and Soul? Basically, does the board have a right to make its own decision, or is it required to sign this HCA?
It's not required to sign the HCA, but it has to have a principal basis on which to decline. And I mean, comparing apples to apples, HCA to HCA, Flower and Souls is exactly the same as ours. The only difference in the two applications is the location of these spots, and the town ordinance, not us, the town ordinance requires the planning board to make that decision, not the Board of Selectmen.
Well, the planning board has the decision to make regarding site plan approval and the special permit. The board still obviously, the selectmen still have the right to make a decision on the HCA. Or in essence, are you saying that the board can, in essence, say, we've looked at the site, even setting aside that the planning board may be able to work out a special permit that deals with all the issues, that the selectmen cannot examine those issues and making a determination whether they want to sign the HCA?
I think they undermine the ordinance if they take over the planning board's role and responsibility. And we don't have the opportunity to have a full opportunity to have a hearing on the whole issue. I mean, if we're going to have facts, this is sort of a fact-free discussion about school bus stops, where they are, how much traffic there's going to be. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they have the planning board, so that there's an adjudicative process. And that's critical to the due process rights that I mentioned in my letter. I make my living in part by litigating. I don't want to litigate this. I'm hoping that we can resolve this, because we don't want to do what Salem is doing. We don't want to have this litigation that goes on for years with bad blood and spends a lot of money on lawyers. It's not an effective way to, it takes your time, it takes the town's resources and purse. Let's work something out here that is reasonable, that everybody can live with. And I understand that there's always opposition to some of these from local, from the butters, but we're gonna do everything we can to alleviate that. And we'll do that in the context that the town set up, which is the planning board process.
Well said, Troy. Thank you.
Anybody here have any other further comments? As Carol Maker, I see you still have your hand up.
I'm Karen Gom. I'd like to say something.
Go right ahead, Ms. Gunn.
We just need an address, please.
Yep, Karen Gom, 33 Bow Street, Halifax, Mass. I live right behind there also on the dirt road. Bow Street is a dead-end dirt road. But I just agree with all the other residents in the area of that pot shop. I'm not opposed to pot shops at all. We could have a bunch of them in town. This is just not the location. It's a commercially zoned, but it's surrounded by all residents, children, animals. And I am concerned about the bus stops and the increased traffic. And I know it's the same as Flower and Soul, but that location is just, the location is the huge difference. And it's a big difference as far as I'm concerned. So I just wanted to say I'm opposed to it, that's all. But thank you.
Charlie, anything else?
Deborah put up her hand
I
again.
do. Hey, Deborah Bunzel, 98 Walnut Street. I figured I'd turn my camera on for this question. I don't understand the bringing up litigation. Were we just threatened?
No, I was asked a question about the Salem litigation. It's already ongoing. And I don't want to follow that path. We do not want to do that. We are, I mean, other companies would come in here and would have already filed suit. We don't want to do that.
Good to know.
I mean, if we're compelled to, we will. We will protect our rights. But as any party will. But we didn't come in here with the intent to litigate. We want to resolve this.
Any further comments? At this point in time, I'm not as comfortable as I'd like to be with the presentation, but at the same time, our responsibility is the legal point of a host agreement to protect the town. And I think that perhaps we ought to really consider, Ashley, even though with the complaints, of putting the HCA in action. Ash?
I'm here. I mean, that's the part we play in this. We don't play a part in the security and the setbacks and all of those things. So I have faith that the planning board will look into all these concerns and make sure that all the rules are followed, and that the proper procedures are done. I do hope that they'll do the community outreach as soon as possible because, though there isn't a quote unquote specific order, I do believe that if you're going to be a successful business in this town, that you should really hear what the residents are saying and be a little bit more accommodating. So that being said, the part that we play, I do agree with you, Troy. And unfortunately, I think that's where we're at. I do understand all the residents that are here tonight, though.
Troy, just so you know, on the agenda, the agenda included obviously the public forum itself. Whether you want to wait until the 12th and officially put on the agenda for a decision on the HCA until then, or I guess if you wanted to, it's up to the board to whether what we posted was sufficient to indicate that a decision might be made tonight.
I don't have any issue with that. I just want to make a statement that we've got to trust the fact that our police department, fire department, the planning board, building inspector are going to do their jobs to do the best before any kind of permit is given. So we will continue this meeting until the 12th to make a decision.
So what you'll be doing is closing this meeting. We're obviously the form that we're doing tonight will have closed. And then on the 12th, further, as long as the board agrees, I'll put it on the agenda for a possible decision on the 12th on that agenda.
Fair enough.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yes.
So
With that, unless there's further comments, we'll close the meeting at this time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your attention to this. I know it's a difficult issue.
So Troy, if you want to move to adjourn and Ashley get a second or vice versa, or however you want to do it.
I motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Carly.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night, folks. We're
Good
closed.
night.